Our final panel of the day before our closing keynote with Michael Steele is a popular topic, sustainability. Our panelists will be debating whether sustainability and environmental concerns should be a factor into your business model. We will hear about the case for sustainability and actionable steps you can take to include the planet as well as profit into your bottom line. I'd like to please welcome to the stage Derek Smith, the Executive Director of the Resource Innovation Institute, Frederick Schilling, co-founder of Big Tree Farms, Emily Paxia, Managing Director of Poseidon Asset Management, and our moderator, the one and only Arcview's Chief Sustainability Officer, Mr. Francis Prisnar. Please, welcome to the stage.
So this is a panel on sustainability, the first panel on sustainability at Arcview history. Thank you all for joining us. I think my panel members have we know who you are, right? Emily, Frederick, and Derek. And I think I want to get started by saying that years at Arcview, I've looked at a lot of deals. I've worked with a lot of investors, and sustainability almost never comes up as a topic. That has been very surprising to me, coming from other industries where sustainability is essential to being successful. So I'd like to ask the panel, I think I'll start with Emily. Is sustainability relevant to investor decisions in the cannabis sector?
So Emily Paxia, co-founder and managing director of Poseidon Asset Management. We've been investing in the industry for 5 years now, and we've got 32 active portfolio companies. And for us, sustainability is an important factor when we're evaluating our investment decisions. And there's a couple of reasons for this. First of all, it's because we believe in it, fundamentally. And I know that's not always a popular decision, but I've been laughed out of rooms before for saying I was going to invest in cannabis, and our fund is up enormously since we launched it. So I don't feel too bad that they laughed me out of the room on that idea. So sustainability I would put in the same category as potentially not everybody sees it at first blush as being important, but it's incredibly important. So why? First of all, we have to be on the side of the regulators to make it easier to continue to push this industry forward. The way that we go to zero from an investment perspective is if the industry gets shut down or closed down or pushed backwards. So how do we do this? We have sustainable practices. We don't drain the energy grid. We can work with the energy companies to get credits, which is beneficial to the business. We don't pollute the water, because then the national parks or the state parks don't have an issue with us, and the regulators start to become a fan of a legal and regulated industry. So this helps the industry move forward and thus helps to preserve and protect our investments. The next thing is that the bottom line is a critical piece to evaluating your investment opportunities. I don't want a company that's got teeny tiny little margins that can't sustain their growth and that goes upside down when competition comes and price compression comes. I want a company that's looking forward to that moment. And the way to do that is through sustainability. You need to reduce your cost of production. And so how do you do this? Is through sustainable practices. It may be a little bit more expensive in the upfront, but in the long term, these are the businesses that stick around and thrive. The third reason I would say this is important is because it's an edge. People are investing people buy products based on their values. The millennial market is an enormous and growing market. They are a great consumer base, they have a great pocketbook, and they care. If you look at market statistics, they care about where their plant and products are coming from and how they're grown. It's a part of an experiential purchasing decision. And so therefore, it is important for them to understand that their products are being grown sustainably, especially in cannabis. And then the other side of this is just really building interesting and innovative things. I've always said that cannabis can be a playground for where we make things better. And this has been the case with how we're cultivating things indoors and doing things better by that standard. But I also think this can mean in terms of packaging. So if we're using packaging that's very heavy in plastics, let's think about how we can make an investment opportunity out of hemp and hemp-based plastics. So tying all of these things in are ways that we can experience sustainability in a way that also improves our investment opportunities and increases our returns.
Wow, thanks, Emily. That was a lot.
Well, you asked a question.
And what next, Frederick, if you could explain the value of sustainability in your businesses and why you think investors should care, and of course, relevant background.
I think she just nailed it. I think she just covered 100% of it. And it's I am a serial entrepreneur of this is I'm on my fourth company now, actually in the hemp space. And it's, you know, really comes down to me as a founder entrepreneur, where my North Star is in my moral ground, and I am rooted in ethics of sustainability. And so as I've built my companies, just by having the DNA of my own morals built into the companies, we have always maintained a certain edge of sustainability because of how I think about building a company. There's not one stone that's unturned, and how can we improve something? Because, as you said, ultimately sustainability does drive efficiencies, and also it mitigates risk. We were talking in the back room a little bit about this, but we as investors or entrepreneurs always need to mitigate the risks, understand where the risks are, and I'm a big believer that in our modern day, not incorporating strict standards of sustainability, and that's a very, it's an overused word these days, as we were talking earlier, but it's an easy word to latch onto. If we don't really bring into our organizations, or as an investor looking at an organization, these different buckets of sustainability, you're not doing your job of your due diligence, because there's going to be certain risks, I believe, in our modern day business arenas where you could get whacked. So
Right.
I would highly recommend making sure you check that box of sustainability to mitigate that risk.
Frederick, I want the audience to know that you founded and then sold Dagoba Chocolates, right, to Hershey's. Would Hershey's have considered you as an acquisition target in the absence of your sustainability commitment? Is that what they were buying in part?
100%.
Right.
100%. Yeah, Dagoba, we were the first company to really incorporate triple bottom line principles in the chocolate industry. Started that in 2001 and sold the company in 2006. So it was a very, very quick ramp up, and 100% they were after us because of the DNA of what we had built in the company for our sustainable platforms.
Right. So the point I wanted to make sure came out was that any cannabis company that's looking for an exit by being acquired needs to be careful that their values and their culture is compatible with the company that's going to buy them. And most mainstream companies now have a sustainability orientation. In fact, the most successful companies in the economy, the top 100, all have sustainability commitments, and that's what they're looking for. Okay, so I want to ask Derek a question. Derek is with RII. He's going to explain that, but he's committed his entire career now to sustainability in the cannabis sector. So having heard what you just did from Fred and Emily, what would you say to investors on top of what we've already heard? That is, why should investors care about sustainability in making an investment choice?
Well, so again, Derek Smith, Resource Innovation Institute. We're a nonprofit that is actually looking at the various natural resource impacts of the cannabis industry, quantifying them, and then informing market actors, from investors to operators to governments to utilities and others, about what is the most efficient path going forward to grow this plant and to be in this market. We do that through capturing data from cannabis cultivation facilities on energy use, lighting equipment used, HVAC, et cetera, and help growers benchmark their energy performance right now. I would add that I guess, I've worked at the intersection of sustainability and commerce for about 20 years, as I know you have, Francis. And by the way, thank you for all you have done for this industry and to put this together today, Francis. I actually hesitate to use the word sustainability. I think it can mean everything and nothing. So I actually would encourage people to think about resource efficiency rather than sustainability. And you all are putting your resources, your financial resources out. You want to know that those are being used most efficiently, especially in a market like this where there are really no best practices, no real standards to judge how well those dollars are being used, and how line items on budgets that you're looking at that have energy could be 30 to 50% of the cost structure of the company. You need to know that your management is using those resources wisely. And what I think is a major challenge in this industry as we look at how to be most resource efficient in a cost compression, which is only going to continue, is to really understand what is a baseline, what is an efficient facility, and I think to be curious about that and to really grill the management about how they're using your financial resources to make sure that they're staying on top of technology advancements, new techniques, best practices, et cetera. And those are all the things that we at RII are trying to gather from the marketplace and inform market actors so they can make smart decisions.
Thank you, Derek. That's very, very helpful. I just want to talk quickly about employee retention or attraction, retention, and engagement. I've run environmentally and sustainability-focused companies. I can tell you, we would get incredible applicants because they believed in our mission and our core values, and they would stay with us. Is that true in cannabis as well? Could sustainability be a factor in retaining and engaging the very best employees? Have we seen that happen?
I'll go ahead and jump in. This is my current company, Clear Sun. We are a large-scale industrial hemp grower for the purpose of the CBD industry. And we are a relatively new company. In my other organizations, in all my organizations, we always promote the ethos of resource management, of sustainability. And by and large, the quality of people that I have been able to hire because of the company ethos, because of the environment that's created by upper management who promotes those ethos, has been stellar. And the retention rate has been, we rarely lose employees. And usually when we lose an employee, it's a life-changing event that they have to kind of move forward. It's a very good environment. And we know for a fact that these employees will actually take a cut in salary to come work for an organization like ourselves because of it's a great environment and they're actually doing something that they believe in. So, yes.
Great. Did you want to add to that, Emily? Or?
Yeah, I think that's actually a really great point, because one of the things we're always worried about as investors is how are the teams doing and how much turnover you have in those teams. And some of the companies that we have that are the most dedicated to that mission of resource efficiency, or working with companies that are focused on resource efficiency, there definitely is a commitment to that business as well as to the ideas behind and the ideals behind it. And so we have seen some stickier employment situations, which I think is great.
Great, thank you. Well, let's now talk about customers and customer loyalty. Is sustainability a factor with regard to customer loyalty for brands, for example? It seems like it might be for some, but in cannabis, does that make sense? Just to elaborate further, a lot of people from the stage claim to be pitching to the millennials. The millennials are, from my experience, are not brand loyal necessarily. They tend to make decisions based on their own values, which include sustainable and organic and good for the earth. So why doesn't that come up with the pitches that we hear? Or why isn't that not part of the discussion with the investors? Any ideas?
I think that's a really good point. And one of the recent panels I went to attend outside of this industry was about the craft beer industry. And one of the things they talk a lot about is that the millennial cohort in particular is category loyal, but they are not necessarily brand loyal. So that means they're loyal to the idea of craft beer. They are not loyal to Lagunitas or Ballast Point. And I think that this is an aspect of where you create an experiential and an emotional connection to a brand is through the core values of your business and the core values of your brand. And there have been some different companies outside of this category that have gone after this focus on the environment and environmentally friendly practices and materials that I think have been doing that to really create a specific niche and a specific experience around their brand to create a deeper connection, which the other aspect of the millennial cohort is that they're all about experiences. So tying anything experiential or emotional to that is a way to kind of engender some form of kind of evangelism and support around that brand.
Okay, Emily, I'm going to just stick with you for a minute.
Okay.
Do you have any examples that you can share with the audience about how a company you selected to invest in took advantage of sustainability and made it a better choice or a better investment compared to others?
So one of the companies that we work with is Spark. You probably saw them earlier today. One of the things that they have focused on with some of their cultivation practices is going after that Demeter or Demeter certification around practices in their farming. And I think that what that does is it shows that they're really committed to a long-term farming practice that will keep their earth and their ground very friendly to the plants. They can continue to cultivate there time and time again. And I think that ultimately what that will lead to is something that they can market and sell as well as a way to kind of demarcate their differentiation. And we've seen this in wine and spirits as well with the terroir, where that really makes a difference, where your cultivation is all a part of the quality experience that you have with the product.
Great, thank you. So how hard is it for investors to understand where there's opportunities for resource efficiency, Derek? We see a lot of pitches for technology, for lights and for irrigation, for things like this, and then grow facilities that rely on this technology. Is it easy for investors to understand what good technology is versus not? Because how do they do that?
I don't envy investors who are making technology decisions in this market. I mean, it's very tough. Like I said, there's no data that really shows what is the most efficient way we can produce this plant or this product in this climate, in this type of cultivation setting. We don't know what good energy practice, what good water practices are, because this industry's been in the shadows for so long that nothing was ever really written down. Things were passed along word of mouth. Of course, you hear, I'm sure, every grower is the best, right? So it's really hard to assess what is good performance, and that is truly the purpose behind Resource Innovation Institute as an objective nonprofit that is capturing data from facilities and like I said, reporting them back out so that we can make sound financial investment decisions, so that governments can write good policy, so that utilities can support the buy down of efficient technology with incentives. That all has to be based on data, and I think this industry needs to get over this thought that best practices are a trade secret. We need to elevate everybody's knowledge in this industry so that we can move forward as an industry, because it does none of us any good if the industry has a black eye for being a resource hog, particularly when it doesn't need to be, but we need to figure this out.
Okay, great. In every other sector that I've worked with, and maybe everyone that exists except for cannabis, there are standards. There are standards. Of course, there's regulations on things like pesticides and water quality, et cetera, but in cannabis, we don't have environmental performance standards, but they are in other industries. So why don't they apply to cannabis, or should they? What should we do about standards?
Well, we need to create them, but we got in this industry because we saw the biggest opportunity to have a mission impact on climate, because there's such a massive energy and climate impact from particularly indoor production. but we realized, and the dream is we'll create a lead for weed type of certification label ultimately. So you can designate a facility as resource efficient, and an investor can know that if they invest in that it's going to perform well. What we realized is you can't create a label until you have standards, and you can't create standards until you have data. So we really have to focus on data now. And I'll tell you, otherwise, regulation is coming. It's already arrived in Massachusetts, and guess what? They essentially mandated the use of LED technology with, frankly, very little stakeholder input. I think they attempted, and I think they are definitely doing their best job at supporting stakeholders through the rollout of that law. And we're involved in supporting that effort. But the reality is there is no lighting efficacy standard yet that is designated for horticultural lighting like there is for every other lighting that you walk under every day. And so it truly is buyer beware. It truly is trust what the manufacturer tells you. And that's not good enough. We have to do better, and we have to do better pretty quickly.
Okay, so that leads to another topic. But I want to just stay with this for a second. Frederick, you have a whole nother company now. Can you tell us about that company and how sustainability is relevant to what you expect your success to be in that industry? Because it's not the typical it's hemp, right? It's a big agricultural production. So it seems to me that sustainability would be essential to be successful in that sector. Is that correct?
It's applicable to all industries, is my answer. I just apply it to hemp, and I want to back up to your initial your previous question in terms of standards, and my quick response to that is standards exist. Standards can be pulled from other industries and applied to any other industry, and my take on that is, for cultivation, organic standards already exist. For manufacturing standards, they already exist, whether it's GMP, SQF, GFSI, BRC, whatever it may be, certain standards do already exist. Now, because cannabis is federally illegal still, some of these standards like USDA organic can't be necessarily recognized, but they can still be applied. So I would definitely recommend or suggest that companies look outside the box and just cross-pollinate and use what's already out there into standards. You can still be third-party audited, and make sure you have your ducks in a row and your operations tight. Now, when it comes to hemp, fortunately it's federally legal, and we can cross state lines with our product, and that's really kind of why I wanted to focus on it, because the scalability of hemp and CBD is, in my opinion, it's much quicker, it's much larger. I feel it's going to be a much larger market, so there's going to be much more play to have a much bigger impact in the market with hemp. How we apply sustainability to it, it's a big ag crop, and we are going in that direction. We are one of the largest growers on the West Coast, if not the country. We have about 1,000 acres under our direct management this year. And when you have 1,000 acres of a product, any crop, there's a lot of questions and a lot of things you have to put in place for sustainability. In my other company, in Big Tree Farms, we operate the largest coconut supply chain in Southeast Asia. We have about 14,000 farmers in that. And that brought up a whole new, rat's nest of questions of sustainability. But with hemp, when you're row cropping, a simple example, like for me, I can't stand plastic. You mentioned it. Plastics, we all know, right? Straws are being banned. Vape pens, disposables, are going to be going the way of straws. FYI, my opinion, that's a liability you all should be looking at. But for us as a row cropping, if you look at how hemp is grown, or even cannabis large grows, they use plastic in the rows. I don't want plastic in my fields. I don't want to be contributing plastic to the landfills. So here we have 1,000 acres of row crop hemp, but no plastic in the field at all. We're going about things a different way. We have crews going in, weeding by hand. Costs a little more, but for us, it's a part of that story. We're embedding that story into the DNA of the enterprise. We don't use plastic. We are a B2B play, so that allows our customers to also say, you know, our material is made without plastics and other things that we do incorporate into our company. We allow our customers to tie into their company. So it's a really just building up that marketability of the sustainability story.
And Frederick, that makes your products more desirable, right? And more.
I believe so, yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay. Boy, I'm looking at the clock, and we're not out of time yet, but we have time for a couple of more topics. And one I want to talk about is the entrepreneur. So when I evaluate a deal, I look at the solution to a problem that's being solved. So that's the concept. That is, you know, what is the technology, or what is the approach that's going to solve a problem? And there's a lot of good ideas out there. But more importantly, as time's gone by, it's the attributes or traits of the entrepreneur that make a difference. So there's the deal, that is the technology, and then there's the person. So it's very easy to evaluate the technology from an environmental or sustainability standpoint. It's harder to get at those values with a person. So Frederick, you know, if I met you, I would say, you got it, okay? But most of the people that I interview or talk to through Arcview anyways, as entrepreneurs, are not on board, or at least they're not mindful of it. Of course there's exceptions, but they're not mindful of it. So what should we look for in entrepreneurs? What traits or characteristics that maybe are not necessarily on the surface that would provide reassurance to an investor that if sustainability was valuable, that they would act on it?
Well, you know, it's always a part of our discussion with our companies when it comes down to if they're a cultivation or if they're a product company. And I think it all comes down to the fact if they're thinking about how you weave this into the business plan. And I do find that we've had a few people who've pitched us where it feels like they've kind of stooped a buzzword or two about a sustainable thing they're going to do in their business, but it doesn't feel like it's integrated into the thoughtfulness of the business. And so that's something we look at as it's kind of a sign that they're just trying to throw some buzzwords into it, and it's not really a part of their business plan. So I'm looking for somebody who's actually consciously integrating this into their business plan, and that they understand it not just from the impact of improving things and the conditions of how we're treating the earth and how we're treating our resources, but how it will, because I'm an investor and I'm a fund manager, I have to think about my investors. So it has to be a part of how it does also preserve the bottom line and accelerate the growth and scalability of the product. So that's a key part. And if it's not integrated, if it feels like it's disjointed, those are some flags for me.
Okay, thank you. I believe that most of the entrepreneurs that come to us have this in mind, have sustainability and environment in mind, but the investors don't draw it out from them because it's not on their agenda. So I think the advice I would give investors is to put that on your evaluation criteria and raise that topic and be prepared.
I think that's important because if we're focused on the bigger picture and the long-term viability of our investments and of this industry, that's a key part of it, and it's a key part of the evaluation of the investments that you're placing.
Thank you. We have time for a final statement from each of you. 30 seconds, please. What is the most important thing you want this investor audience to know about sustainability for making wise investment decisions? Derek, you look like you're eager to share your wisdom.
Eager to pass the baton. I would say don't be overwhelmed by it. It can be overwhelming. You can go any which way and get down any rabbit hole you want pursuing sustainability. Look at wherever your biggest impact is, your biggest throughput, your biggest resource expense, and start there, focus there, and then use the savings or wisdom that you learn there to keep chipping away throughout the business, and you will see the returns pretty quickly.
Frederick?
Yeah, I would agree with that. Don't get overwhelmed by it. It's a very simple question. You know, it's part of the due diligence checkbox. And there's a great website, climatecollaborative.org. That's it. It's a part of an organization. I'm a part of OSC Squared, but it's laid out so simply. climatecollaborative.org. There's a list of things you got to do. There you go.
Thank you. Emily,
I'm excited to think about what these two are talking about and thinking about how we can use data to inform our decisions and to improve, because I think that even if we've endeavored with not the most sustainable or resource-friendly decisions so far, that we can course correct and improve upon that and always evolve. And I think that one thing is to just be open-minded at all times about how you can improve on your business operations in terms of efficiency, because I think we just saw a great example of this with WeWork the other day, where they ran through a whole evaluation of how they can improve their use of resources, and how it came out was how they're eating. And so I think that we can all think about these things more creatively and be more open-minded about how we can improve our businesses and what that means for the growth and scalability of those businesses, and also the adoption and friendliness towards the industry.
thank you. I want to thank all of our panel members. It was excellent. I could easily spend a lot more time on this. Thank you all.